Welcome to another episode of Upstate and Litigate, a video cast where we discuss all things legal, especially those legal topics that affect upstate New York. I'm one of the hosts, John DeGasperis, and I'm a partner at the law firm of Basch Keegan.
And I'm Derek Spada, also a partner at Basch Keegan. As John said, we discuss all things legal and sometimes things illegal. Today we're going to discuss construction site injuries and accidents. And before we dive into that, John, who's dressed up as one of the village people here today, is going to tell us about one of his recent victories.
Well, I was trying to get in the mood here because our theme today is construction accidents, but I'm going to tell you, this thing's hot, so I'm going to take it off. All right, so what are we doing? We're doing new topics, new wins.
A new win, yeah, some kind of settlement or verdict or anything.
Yeah, well,
new and exciting.
We just had the verdict at Basch Keegan for a woman who was involved in a head-on car crash and made a relatively quick recovery, but she suffered a concussion in the car crash and suffered from post-concussion syndrome. As you know, head injuries are one of my favorite types of cases to handle. And this was a great case, I think, and a great outcome for a really good woman who deserved a good outcome. The insurance company here offered $75,000 to settle the case. You and I spoke about it a lot. I had your input. I had Eli and Maureen's input as well. We all knew that it just was not a fair offer. It was a scary case. We knew we could lose or, get a verdict that was comparable to the settlement offer. But I had a lot of encouragement from you all. I think we all knew that justice required that we go to trial. And ultimately, the verdict was favorable. I told the jury in my closing argument that the plaintiff was not the only thing on trial or the only person, but concussion was on trial, and the jury returned a verdict for $425,000, which was about 6 times the offer. So it was a great result.
Nice.
Yeah. And how about you? You're always doing, you're a dynamic lawyer in the sense that you do everything: trials, appeals, oral arguments. I'm kind of one-dimensional. I just sign up a lot of work and litigate cases. But what do you got going on?
What do I have? Last week I went to the appellate division to argue a case, but we're still waiting on the decision. It'll be probably about a month and a half until we hear on that one. So I'll save that one for maybe our next podcast.
Yeah. And that's going to be an important case. That
it is.
Helps. The outcome there is going to affect a young child. But
yeah,
any victories? I
had one that actually kind of goes along with today's topic. I settled a case where the client went to a house. It was a single family home to do some roofing work and fell off of the roof. And so it's ordinarily not a case, as we'll discuss with this labor law topic. If you fall at a single family house while doing construction work, you don't qualify to have a case. But if it's a multi-family home or business, commercial property, then you would qualify to have a case. So the client had been turned down by a couple other attorneys and then called me. And he mentioned during the conversation that the house was vacant, but it was rented on Airbnb. And that makes it a commercial property because no one actually lived there. It was owned solely for the purpose of making a profit by renting it on Airbnb. That gave us an opening to pursue a case here on behalf of this guy. And he had no workers' compensation coverage, so I was able to get him some money to cover his medical bills, lost earnings, and a few extra dollars in his pocket. So, it worked out for him, and he was happy with the outcome.
Yeah, you had a great result there. So that was good. And that's good lawyering, for you to discover that the home was used for commercial purposes. That's why you need a lawyer for these things, especially those big traumatic construction injuries, construction accidents. So let's segue there. So as personal injury lawyers, every year we handle numerous cases involving men and women who get injured on construction sites. And here in New York, those cases are very important. One, for the construction worker who's injured. These cases are incredibly important to the worker because they're hurt on the job, which means when they're hurt and not working, they don't have a wage. And oftentimes construction workers earn a good wage, and they need those wages to support their lives and their families. So I think that these types of cases are incredibly important, and they're also very meaningful because New York State has what we call the labor law, which seeks to protect construction workers. So why don't you tell our listeners a little bit, overview of New York State's labor law, sometimes called the scaffold law?
Sure. Well, it's a little tricky, but I'll start from the basics. So first, every worker who's injured should have workers' compensation coverage, which is not what we're here to talk about today. That was in our previous podcast with Ralph Kirk. So if you're injured on any work site, you should get workers' comp, which would cover your medical bills and up to 2/3 of your lost earnings based on whether or not you're disabled from your injuries.
And workers' comp is really designed just to keep you afloat, right?
Yeah.
So that you don't suffer financial devastation as a result of getting hurt on the job.
Yeah. And then the labor law, which we're here to talk about today, comes into play basically in three different ways. But ordinarily, for the labor law to apply and then to have a case beyond workers' compensation, you have to either fall from an elevated height at a commercial work site, which is a business, apartment building, some kind of property that's used for profit. More or less.
It could be the early stages of a commercial property. It could be vacant land that is being erected, right? It's the very infancy of a construction project, but go on.
And that's one way. Another way is if there's a violation of an industrial code, and there's a long list of these industrial codes. So someone could trip on debris on a construction site. And again, if it's a commercial site, that's just one example. But a person could qualify to have a case because there could be a violation of an industrial code. There's various ways. There's lighting. There's stairwell requirements. All sorts of
electrocution, noxious fumes. These things are all governed.
Yeah. So essentially, if someone is injured on a commercial, business type work site, they should call a lawyer at least to see what their options are. And the third way is general negligence, which comes into play again on commercial work sites, and that's if someone else is negligent in any sort of a manner and causes an injury to a worker, but it can't be their own coworker. So if they work for the same company, again, you can't sue your employer, you can't sue a coworker who's got the same employer, but you could sue a different contractor. So for example, if you're a mason and the electrician messes up and causes you to be injured, then you can sue the electrician's company.
Right. Yeah. So, and so just to summarize, there are three categories of statute that govern these construction accident cases. I think that it's fair to say, maybe you would disagree, but I think it's fair to say that the most common type of construction accident involves gravity. So you either have a human being working at an elevated height and they fall, or you have an object at an elevated height that falls. And what do we know? We know that when people fall from heights, or when objects fall from heights, the injuries are devastating. Mm-hmm. They can be really, really bad. And that's what the law seeks to protect those individuals in particular.
Yeah, and those laws were put into place about 100 or so years ago, mainly for New York City when skyscrapers were being built. Workers were up, 30, 40, 50 stories, and they had no protection.
No protection.
There's that famous photo where the workers are sitting on that I-beam.
Clip that in if you can.
Yeah, where they're sitting on that I-beam, and not one of them has any sort of safety gear. And if I recall correctly, the guy on the end of that photograph looks like he has a whiskey bottle besides. But,
right.
I guess
you're
times
right.
were different back then.
But it is. But no, you're right though. It is that era of construction that forced the New York State legislature to pass these laws that are designed to protect the worker. And what, if you really think about the underlying philosophy of the law, what we're trying to do is tell commercial property owners, people who are going to make money off of this property, we're telling them you have the resources to protect the humans. And so you have to do it. You have to give them proper equipment to do the job safely. And if you don't, because you're the rich guy, right? Like you're the developer, you have all the money. So you have to give these people protection, proper protection, I think is the term. And if you don't give them proper protection, you are responsible for their injury, even if they made a mistake, meaning the construction worker, right? Because men and women at work, when they're trying to get the job done, they make mistakes. They reach too far. They expose themselves in a dangerous way. They hurry. And that's when errors happen and that's when injuries occur. So the law mandates that the rich people, the developers, the commercial property owners, the corporations protect the worker. And I love that. I love the spirit of that law. That's why I love these cases.
Yeah. And with the safety device, a proper safety device being in place, if the worker makes a mistake, the idea is that they don't get injured because they've got the safety device.
Right.
So
Now,
they can reach too far, but they're not going to fall to the ground because they have a harness or they're on a scaffold or something to stop them from falling.
yeah. And just briefly, let's see. I know Derek will probably ace this, but what are some of the safety devices that New York scaffold law touches on? And maybe we can list them out here.
There's a pretty long list in labor law section 240, but it's
some of them are crazy and kind of outdated. But
it's the ones that come into play now are mostly scaffolds. I don't think ladders are enumerated on there, but you do need some type of
ladders,
like a ladder,
pulleys,
ropes, hoists, stays.
Yep.
There's more terms that
it's kind of crazy. There's a whole list, but it's not limited to them. I mean, now it's like if you don't get a man lift, a mechanized man lift, like that's a case, right? I mean, like you should probably always have one. And things like this too, the vest.
Yeah.
The hard hats. I mean, it's rare anymore that you see construction workers not wearing hard hats because they all know this thing's going to save your life. But, it can be something as simple as being bright, being seen. We deal a lot with people on roofs who step right off the roof. And you think like, how could that happen? Well, it's because they're working, they're pulling things, they're pushing things. They're not totally observant of what's going on.
And they're out there in the sun all day.
Yeah, they're hot, they're tired. So we want perimeters so that people don't fall. We want, we want railings. Railings are a big thing, right? And that goes to scaffolds. It's one thing to have a scaffold, but you can have a crappy scaffold, but that's not very good, right? So we want scaffolds that actually function, that actually protect the workers from falling backwards. How about things falling off the scaffolds to levels below? We want to prevent those types of accidents from happening. I think many construction workers now too would sometimes in frustration say these jobs are so safe. Everything is safety protocol. It's because it's going to save your life,
Yeah. And the law places the ultimate responsibility on the property owner. So it ultimately funnels down to the property owner.
Right.
And then if a subcontractor is also liable, then the property owner has the ability to bring them into the case if they see fit.
Well, not only the property owner, you are right there. I mean, right? Because again, what the law is trying to do is impose the burden on the rich people, right? So, all right, property owner, you're going to always sort of be liable. This is your job site. You better make sure that anybody coming in there to work is going to do it safely. But then we go to the GC, right? The general contractor. So when we have job sites that utilize general contractors, well, now the burden shifts a little bit, right? It's like, all right, property owner, this is your problem, but now you brought in a big time professional. They should know how to do things safely too. And so now we got two pockets to pick from, right? So now let's just talk a little bit about damages. Let's talk a little bit about what lawyers like us, personal injury lawyers, can do for people, men and women, injured on construction sites. So how do we help them?
Well, I guess to make a long story short, we typically file a lawsuit, go through litigation, and then get them a recovery that is ideally substantially more than what workers' compensation is paying them.
Sure, right. Yeah, and what I always tell people too, to touch on your point earlier, when you have construction workers injured on the job, they're going to trigger a whole number of different insurance systems, right? So initially, they're going to trigger the workers' compensation claim. But all that does is keep them afloat for their financial harm. It covers their economic losses, medical bills, lost wages. But what about their injuries, right? What about their pain and suffering? What about their future economic harm? Well, that's where you and I come in, and we seek to recover damages for pain and suffering, bodily injuries, past lost wages that were not compensated by workers' compensation because it's not a full wage reimbursement, it's a partial wage reimbursement, and then future economic harm. So for those construction workers who are never going to work again, lawyers like us fight to ensure that they're still going to get a paycheck for the rest of their work life expectancy. And, these cases, as you know, can be extraordinarily valuable. We had that case up in Saratoga County, it's Albany County, where a gentleman was working at the water park, the Cartwright Water Project down in Sullivan County. He was on the job very early on in the process. They were laying the initial footings for the foundation of this massive hotel and water park. And as a crane lifted some rebar, a piece fell and hit him. We settled that case for, what was that, $1.4 million, because he actually went back to work, but he had a limited work capacity, right? So he wasn't going to earn as much. So the cases are extraordinarily valuable, and it's usually because these men and women have wages. They make good livings, and when you take that away from somebody, that's an incredible loss. And I'm sure you see that when you help these people. Oh, you know what I want to talk about with construction accidents? They can be challenging because oftentimes the injured worker gets carted off the job, right? They get hurt, the ambulance comes, they get taken away. They never go back to that job. They're working with people that really just got placed there through the local unions and the shops, and they have no evidence. So they call you, they got hurt on the job 6 months ago. They're finally getting to a lawyer. They have no pictures. They can hardly identify anybody they worked with. You know, they know the name of their employer. And you and I are starting from scratch. And it's
I fell and I got hurt.
Yeah. And right? I mean, do you?
I've had that. More often than not, that's the way it goes.
Yeah.
And then you have to start digging around, and it just takes time and just a lot of work to prove these cases.
They are a lot of work. Why do you, and like, go on about that for a minute. So like, why do you say that these are a lot of work? I think there are a number of reasons.
Yeah. Well, first, like you mentioned, there's not always an accident report, or if there is, it's made by the employer after the person's carted away. Right. So the employer puts all the blame on the guy who just got carted away and says all the safety devices were in place and just covers it up on the report. So now you've got a written document that's bad for you, and you have to try to disprove what's in there because someone wrote this document to cover themselves or other people at the work site.
Or they weren't there. And they don't really know. It's like somebody fell, and it's like, well, all right.
Yeah. So like with a car accident, the police will come and investigate, and they typically do a good job. Yeah. With these worksite accidents, you get the opposite more often than not.
And also too, like if you fall at a multi-million-dollar, $100 million construction project, there might be some type of investigation. There's going to be a little bit more paperwork. You have all these big players, and the insurance companies want documents. But what happens to the guy who falls at a $1 million project that's run by some Joe Schmo? No paperwork. It's like, get this guy out of here. Let's keep going,
Yeah.
But what are some of the other reasons why these cases are challenging?
Well, then when it comes time to do depositions, you have to figure out who you want to depose. And a lot of the time, you don't even know the names of the people who were there. Mm-hmm. So it's hard to track down these people to do a deposition. And if you just depose like the guy who owns the company or the guy who owns the property, they're either going to know nothing, or if they know anything, they're going to put all the fault on your client.
Right. And that's, those are the resources of the insurance company. They're just going to try to blame the little guy who's just trying to do their job, right? Now, I also think that these cases are challenging because legally, the law is really complicated. The courts are very inconsistent about how they interpret the labor law and our scaffold law. I think that the courts have sort of degraded the law and its an original application. So I think that the courts are sort of making it more difficult to represent construction workers because the courts are throwing the cases out or making it more difficult to apply this labor law to the facts of our cases. Yeah. But that's where you come in because you're pretty good at navigating that kind of stuff. I also want to just address workers' compensation for a second and like a very warped perspective of the construction workers. Many construction workers who work with small outfits who get placed on these jobs as subcontractors, they might work for that employer for many, many years. And so they develop a certain amount of loyalty. And I think that many construction workers have a lot of pride in themselves and in their work. And they are some of the most reluctant people to file suit, even though they know that they need help, that they're financially vulnerable, that they may not get back to work, or they may not get back to work in the same capacity, and yet they're still hesitant, and they feel as if filing a lawsuit in some way hurts their own employer, right?
But actually, it's the opposite.
It's
It
the
helps their employer, because it's their employer's workers' compensation company that's paying on their claim.
Right.
So their employer's workers' compensation rates went up. But when we file a lawsuit, it's not against their employer, it's against some other company or the owner, or someone else other than their employer. Then when we obtain a settlement or verdict on their personal injury case, the money goes, a portion of that money goes back to the workers' compensation carrier,
Right.
which is the employer's carrier. And then that should undo the claim. And so once the employer gets their money back, recoups it,
but these employers, right, the owners of these various construction companies, what do? They bitch and moan about how much it costs to carry workers' compensation insurance, and they always want to pay their guys some cash not to file the claim. I'll take care of you. I'm going to tell construction workers this right now. If you get hurt on the job and you suffer a serious injury, the only person that you are hurting by not filing a workers' compensation and subsequent legal claim is yourself and your family. If you don't file the claim, your boss is going to stay rich. The project owner, the landowner, the general contractor, they are going to stay rich. And the insurance companies who insure your loss that you're not filing, they're going to stay rich. So the only person who's going to suffer is you, the injured construction worker. All these other rich parties, the GCs, the landowners, and the insurance companies, they are going to get rich on your back, on your injury. So don't be fooled for a minute. File that claim, go talk to a lawyer, protect yourself and your family if you are seriously injured on a construction site.
Yeah.
What else? Anything else about... I'll just say this. If you get hurt at a construction site, ask someone, listen, if you're seriously injured, like, you're going to be in agony, you're just going to deal with that. And that's all you can do. But if it's possible, ask one of your coworkers, take your phone real fast, take some quick pictures, try to get the names of these other construction workers, text them after, just save their information, because that job site, by the time you get back on your feet, is going to be wrapped up. And all of those workers are going to be on to the next one. And they have no loyalty, right? None of these guys want to get involved. So even though they may witness a serious situation, 2 years later, when it's time for their deposition, they don't want to get involved, right? Again, we think that they think that the litigation is a negative connotation or negatively affects the construction trade. They don't want to help. So if you have the whereabouts and you get hurt on a construction site, take some pictures. Take the names of some witnesses, file an accident report. If there's a legitimate GC or a safety consultant there, file the accident report. Get it documented as soon as possible. File the workers' compensation claim. There's an initial report of accident to an employer. That can be vital. You have to document these things. Sometimes, I'm sure you've seen this, you have these construction workers, they come to your office, and they're like, yeah, I fell on the job. And it's like, oh, okay. Did you take any time from work off? No, I just kept working. And then eventually my shoulder stopped working. And it's like, oh, okay. Well, did you tell your employer you got hurt? Yeah, I did, 4 weeks later. And it's like, oh, all right. Well, did that get reported to the GC? Yeah, when I told my employer 4 weeks later. And okay, well, did you take any pictures of the debris on the floor? No, I just got back up and went to work. And it was like, all right, well, I'll take your case, but this is a hard one, because there's nothing documented. But, so that's, you and I speak from experience. We're always playing Monday night quarterback. So we have the benefit of being able to educate construction workers and tell them, listen, this is what we see. We don't get the pictures that we need. We don't have the names of the witnesses that we need. The report of accident isn't made. So these are just little things that I know it's crazy. But if you're listening to this and God forbid you ever get hurt on a job site, just do those things. I could talk about loss of wage claim. It's critically important. And, most construction workers really take pride in their ability to earn. They usually live good lives, right? They have nice homes. Maybe they got some toys, boats, four-wheelers, pools, a nice yard and landscaping that they like to take care of. They have a big truck. They have, family. They support their family. It's important to them. And when you take their ability to earn away, I think it's some of these construction workers fall the hardest emotionally and mentally, and it's hard for them to admit it. But I mean, tell Derek Spada he can't work for 4 weeks, right? Or tell Derek Spada you're not going to work again for as a lawyer for 12 months. That takes a toll on them emotionally. So the loss of wage claim and the ability to prove it is really important. We prove it through tax records and pay stubs and things like that. And if you have if you're an on the books earner, and it's easy to prove your wage, we can get extraordinary recoveries. Now, there are a lot of trades that work in cash still, and that will come back to bite you at times, right? I mean,
Yeah, that's always a hurdle.
Yeah.
But if you're out of work and if you have some kind of permanent injury, even if you're able to go back to work, we can still try to get future lost earnings by saying that you can't work at the same pace or same capacity as before the incident, or that your career won't be as long as it otherwise would have been because you've got a back injury, shoulder injury, or whatever that will make you retire at age 50 instead of 60 or however it seems to play out.
I think another interesting thing that I'm seeing, and as you know, we see themes, right? We see the industries evolving and insurance companies changing and all these things. A trend I'm seeing is that we have more and more men and women working on construction sites, typically your smaller level construction jobs, who are undocumented. So they don't have social security numbers. And, a few years ago, I got nearly $1 million for a Spanish speaking individual with no social security number. I think we got him like $950,000. He fell off a scaffold, he hurt his shoulder and his neck. And $950,000. He had no social security number. We were able to prove his wage. His employer cooperated and produced documentation showing that a wage was paid. And to my client's credit, even though he didn't have a social security number, he had a number. What is it? The ITEN or something?
Is it a TIN or
TIN number?
Tax
maybe
ID number.
Yeah. So he didn't have a social security number, but he had a tax identification number. So he paid taxes on his wages. So my point to you is, if you are someone who doesn't have proper paperwork, or you're not a citizen, but you were hurt on a construction site in New York, our court system will still take your claim. You have legal rights. You are entitled to recover monetary damages for your injuries, your pain and suffering, and those wages that you use to feed your family. Don't hesitate. Call us. We'll take your case even if you have no social security number. All right, Derek, I think we covered a lot of it here for New York State's labor and scaffold law. Anybody injured on construction sites, as Derek said earlier, you should call a lawyer. You at a minimum probably have a workers' compensation claim. You might even have a third-party claim, which is a personal injury lawsuit against the construction owner, meaning the landowner or the GC. So give Basch and Keegan a call if you're hurt on a construction site. All right, now we're going to transition to the next segment of the show. Is it legal? And Derek, I got a question for you. Can punitive damages be awarded in construction site injury cases? And if so, under what circumstances?
Unfortunately, pretty much never. I don't think I've ever seen a case with punitive damages at a construction site. I just can't recall one. Even if the conduct seems to be outrageous, the law in general in New York State on punitive damages is not good, just across the board, not just for these types of cases. So it's very difficult to get any sort of damages beyond your actual damages, which are pain and suffering, medical bills, lost earnings, both past and future. So I would say rarely, very rarely, if ever, can you get any type of damages beyond your actual damages to punish the owner or contractor who is responsible for your injury. But the law itself is pretty comprehensive and does make the owner and contractor who were responsible for the injury fully liable for the worker's losses.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, it would have to be a really horrible situation in order to qualify for punitive damages. Although I wonder, in that crane case that was resolved not long ago. If
Yeah,
there
in
were
New York
punitive,
City.
I think there were punitive
Yeah.
damages in that because
Something like that where it's really outrageous and
the owner of the
Yeah.
crane knew that thing was in bad shape, and I think they got tagged with punitive. But
Yeah.
I could be wrong. We'll look that up and get back to our viewers. All right. Is it legal? You got a question for me?
All right. John, what types of compensation can injured construction workers seek in personal injury cases?
All right. So generally, construction workers injured at construction sites are eligible for two categories of damages. They get special damages. Those are the economic losses that flow from the injury. So you're typically looking at the medical bills associated with the treatment and the loss of wage component. And you get past and future. Past means from the day of your accident until the day of the resolution of your personal injury case. And if you are expecting to suffer future economic harm, maybe you're not going to go back to work ever, or maybe you're going to need future medical treatment. We take that into consideration, and we want to get you your future anticipated losses as well. So special damages are basically those types of damages that you can use arithmetic for, right? It's like, well, medical bill equals compensation. It's 1 and 1. Then you have general damages. That's more abstract. Those are the damages associated with your injuries, your pain and suffering, your disability status, your mental health. That's not as easy to calculate. So, your arithmetic there's no formula. It's hard to do. We just use our understanding of your injury profile, the extent of your losses, the quality and nature of your injuries to recover those losses. And again, you're entitled to past and future. So you get past pain and suffering from the day of your accident until the day of your resolution, and then you get future. So if your injury is permanent, we're gonna get you compensation for the permanency as well. And that's how it works. In these cases, again, as I said, they can be extraordinary because construction workers, they're working. So when they get hurt, they have a wage. And if they don't go back to work for a prolonged period of time or ever, the case is that much more valuable because we have to go get their money back in addition to what they're entitled to for their injuries. So those are the damages that people are entitled to. All right. Now we're going to segment to my favorite part of the show. Let's get local. All right, so what are we doing first? Let's do our favorite taco place in Ulster County. Derek, do you have one?
Favorite taco place in Ulster County? I'm going to go with it's a tough call. There's like several that come to mind, but I'm going to go with the Tinker Taco Lab in Woodstock.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I haven't been there. Is it good?
Oh, yeah, it's really good. Yeah.
What's the vibe? Like, so is it just little tacos? I mean, that's what I meant when I think taco restaurant or bar. I think
they have like I'll call them like small to medium type tacos. There's other stuff on the menu as well. Okay. It's not only tacos. They have nice bar and good drink selection there, and it's just a fun place to hang out. They've got some indoor seating, outdoor seating.
Is that the place that's like in the corner spot, or
it's
no?
Behind another building. There's a little stream in back. It's behind. I forgot the building in front. It's kind of close to the town hall in Woodstock.
Yeah, you're going toward the town hall.
It's on the right before the town hall.
You just go over the stream.
Yep, it's just past the stream on the right, but it's set back a little bit.
Okay, that's
but they have seating in 2 buildings and some outdoor space. And anyway, it's just a fun little place to hang out.
Yeah, cool. All right. Well, I'm going to say this. Since we're talking about Taco Bar, I'm going to say goodbye to Diego's Taco up in Uptown Kingston. They closed just this last week. They closed their doors, maybe not forever, but for now.
I think he still has a food truck, though, somewhere in.
Oh, does he?
Still doing a
he
food
had
truck
always
in
talked
New
about
Paltz?
getting a food truck. I don't know that he did it.
I think he might have a food truck in New Paltz, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, but they had great tacos. That had a real loyal following for a while in Uptown Kingston. I remember you and I and Mo and Eli, we used to go there quite often. We'd always get the guacamole and the chips and
great tacos. And watch surfers on the TV. So just play videos of.
I used
surfing.
to love watching that surfing there. It was really weird. But no, we had some good times there. So goodbye to Diego's Tacos.
Yeah, we'll miss it.
Yeah. All right, now let's just do one more. Let's talk about local swimming holes. I'll tell you, I was never big on swimming in natural bodies of water, but I've certainly done it here in Ulster County. But I was always a follower. I was never the leader. I was never the guy saying, let's go do it. And I know where to go. I've done it in Woodstock. I've done it in High Falls. I don't even know the names of many of these places, but quick story. The last time I went swimming in a natural body of water, I was an adult. I was a lawyer. I took the day off because I had family in town, my cousin Dan. And we go in High Falls behind like Ollie's Pizza, below the falls. And it was great. It was cool. And I'm thinking to myself, I should do this more often, take some time off work and get into nature. And maybe I should bring my kids out here. And as soon as I say that, I look down in the water and there's a snake swimming across the top of the water. And I didn't freak out, but I thought, well, that'll be the last time I do a natural swimming hole type experience, but probably won't be. But anyway, There's my story. What's your experience with swimming holes here?
It's been quite a while, but I think it's closed now, or blocked off anyway. And there's some signs up. But in Saugerties, there's Fawn's Leap at the waterfall there, where it's
a jump.
Yeah,
Jump
that's a jump. Yeah,
have you done it?
Yeah,
really?
It's been a while, but yeah, I remember going there in high school. And
how many times do you think you've jumped off that thing?
Oh, I don't know. 20, 30.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, you're a cliff jumper?
Well, not really. No, I'm not.
Oh.
But
have you done any other jumping?
Nothing like significant. Or like nothing like from any real height.
Oh no, I don't.
And
do that.
I remember the first time I went there and looked off the waterfall, I looked down and thought, like, I'm gonna die.
What do you think that jump is? At 70 to 100 feet, if not better?
I don't think it's that high, but
no, okay.
It feels like it when you're going through the air. It
Yeah,
feels like
you're
100
right.
feet,
Maybe it's not.
but I really don't know. Maybe 30, 40, 50 feet, but it feels much higher.
I thought
don't
it was
know.
higher.
It feels really high.
I did jump once. Not there. I went in the Binney Waters. Over in
Rosendale.
Yeah, Rosendale area. Yeah. I went with my buddy Pedrick once, and he'll do that kind of thing. And I remember it was right before my first child was born, thinking, well, if I'm going to do this kind of thing, I better do it now. And I was terrified. It took me forever to do the jump, and then I finally did it. And I remember on the way down just thinking, I'm going to, this is not a good idea. And so I did do it. And then I had another, like that, then I'm climbing out and there's a wolf spider or some ridiculous spider crawling on the rock that I'm trying to get out. And I'm like, this is ridiculous. Send me to a Four Seasons with like air conditioning and soft sheets. All right. Okay. Well, that's all we got for Let's Get Local. Let's close this out.
Well, once again, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah, and if you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to our channel. Give us a like. We appreciate you viewing. If you have any legal questions or topics that you want to hear about, let us know. You can email us at the firm or comment below. We appreciate your time. We're signing off from Upstate and Litigate.